Good morning, it's Friday the 22nd of May. This is Europe Today and I'm Maret Gwyn bringing you the headlines and analysis to start your morning live here from Brussels. Coming up today, after the EU downgraded its economic growth forecast and warned of a sharp rise in inflation yesterday, the EU's economy chief, Valdis Dombrovskis, tells this programme the EU will not ease sanctions on Russia as the US and the UK have done to cushion the energy crisis caused by the Iran war. And the EU and Mexico are expected to sign a revamped trade and cooperation deal in Mexico City later today after a decade of negotiations. It adds to a string of trade deals clinched by the EU in recent months as it aims to diversify trading partners in a more volatile world. We speak to the European Parliament's Vice President Javi López from Mexico. Also, as the Cannes Film Festival wraps up this weekend, we ask whether this year's event has been the most politically charged to date, as debates over war, power, ideology and influence dominate the headlines. But first, to our top story this morning. The European Commission has lowered its growth outlook for 2026 and warned of a spike in inflation as the energy crunch continues to rattle the economy. Governments across the EU are taking different approaches to shield households and businesses from rising costs, while the International Monetary Fund has warned the bloc cannot simply subsidise its way through this crisis. For more on this, I'm joined on set by Euronews' Luca Bertuzzi. Luca, good morning. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, and good morning to you.
So tell us first, just for a bit of context, Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, for example, has wrote to the Commission President von der Leyen asking for financial flexibility to tackle this crisis. Is she getting a response?
Well, we're going to see our response soon, I think, because this is a very strong political message that Meloni sent to ask for fiscal flexibility at a time of an energy crunch in Europe. She invoked political courage and said that the energy security should be treated as a European strategic priority alongside defense spending. So Italy, let's keep in mind, it has among the highest energy costs in Europe alongside Germany and Belgium. And the stakes are so high that Meloni said that if not enough fiscal flexibility is provided, Italy might withdraw from the SAFE program, which is the EU program to finance defense spending with low-interest loans.
And we also heard the Hungarian Prime Minister, Peter Magyar, suggesting the EU might need to contemplating buying Russian energy once again, once the war in Ukraine ends. What is the line that Brussels is taking on this?
Yeah, and we'll hear more about this, but so far the line has been a firm no. Still, European governments are facing increasing domestic pressure as energy costs are taking a toll on the economy, and they might be tempted to ease sanctions on Russian relatively cheap energy imports. Ukraine's recent history, of course, has shown that energy dependence can be weaponized. Still, changing posture now for the EU would be a major shift after 4 years of war. But the pressure is mounting. We saw this week that the UK government has sparked a public backlash when it appeared to issue a waiver on sanctions for Russian gas and oil. London described it as a miscommunication, but it's clear that the energy crisis is also biting the UK economy. Last month, we saw the CEO of Eni, Italy's largest energy company, saying that there should be a suspension on the ban on Russian gas imports. The Italian government has so far distanced itself from this position, but several key European countries are heading to elections next year, including Italy.
Okay, Luca. And in fact, our Europe editor, Maria Tadeo, spoke to the Economy Commissioner, Valdis Dombrovskis, yesterday, and she started by asking him about this, about whether the EU would have to contemplate easing sanctions on Russian commodities, as the US and the UK have done to ease the impact of the energy crisis on Europeans?
We already saw back in 2022 that Russia tried to use its fossil fuel supplies as a tool for blackmail and manipulation, and we paid a quite dear economic price for having this dependency from Russia, so therefore there's no point of going back to this. We have diversified our supplies. Our largest gas supply is now Norway, our largest LNG supplier is US, and so on. There are strategic decisions taken to move away completely from Russian oil and gas, and we have to follow it through.
But you rule out, because this is very important, that by the winter, by Christmas, the temperature is going down, that the EU will not take any measures, easing sanctions on Russian energy at any level?
Well, if anything, we need to strengthen sanctions against Russia, not ease, because actually Russia is a country benefiting from this conflict in the Middle East and those higher energy prices, getting substantial windfall profits. So we should not facilitate it further. And it's worth noting that already now we started the process of refilling our gas storages. Well, it currently goes, so to say, within the historical range of this time of the year. That's something we, in any case, need to do. We need to prepare ourselves for next winter.
But you don't feel blackouts? You don't fear that, once again, as we talked about in 2022, there was a real fear that Europe would come to a halt. It will grind to a halt, that the industry would not be able to operate because of a shortage of supplies. You don't expect that to be the case by the end of the year?
No, we do not expect this to be the case now. Indeed, there was this risk back in 2022 or winter from 22 to 23, exactly because we were dependent from Russian fossil fuel supplies, so we should not get back there.
This week, the head of the Italian government sent a letter to the Commission. By now, it's very clear that Giorgia Meloni believes the Commission is not taking her concerns seriously. She says that this is just as equally important energy to defense. What are you going to offer the Italian Prime Minister that is going to placate her anger? Because by now it's clear they are not satisfied with the measures you provided.
We are obviously now looking at policy options and also our fiscal policy response. But as a main message in case remains that the support measures need to be temporary and targeted, the ones which are not sustaining or increasing demand for fossil fuels. So on one hand, not just to perpetuate higher energy demand and thus higher global energy prices, because we are facing supply shock, so we cannot resolve it by stimulating demand. Second, we must keep in mind also more limited fiscal room of maneuver. And also flexibility is already existing in our fiscal framework. We have a number of automatic stabilizers which can play out, which allows for, in a sense, certain fiscal buffer before even member states come with the discretionary measures. But we are doing this assessment and preparing it.
So you're listening to her concerns?
Well, we certainly are listening to the concerns of member states and looking appropriate policy response.
That was the European Commissioner for the Economy, Valdis Dombrovskis, speaking to Maria Tadeu. Now, moving on, Hungarian Prime Minister Péter Magyar is pushing to revive the so-called Visegrád or V4 group, which brings together Poland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic and Hungary. Magyar has even pitched expanding the group. Jakub Janis tells us more.
Péter Magyar's first official foreign trip to Poland wrapped up yesterday. And now, when the diplomatic dust is settling, all eyes are now on the sudden resurrection of the group called Visegrád 4. And if you are a bit unsure what this shift actually means for Europe, or even what the group is about, let's break it down together. The V4 was set up in the early 1990s to guide these post-communist neighbors into the West. But beyond geography, Poland, Czechia, Slovakia and Hungary are bound by the same massive Central European automotive and manufacturing supply chains, but also a shared goal to protect billions in EU cohesion funding. And their most significant political impact came over 10 years ago in 2015, when their coordinated resistance forced Brussels to abandon mandatory migration quotas. And what's interesting, this is no longer the poor relation of Western Europe. Central Europe enters this new chapter with economic strength. Just look at the data. Last year, Poland led the continent with a booming 4% real household income growth, while Germany lagged at 0.6%. And Austria's household income even declined. And this wealth flip gives the region confidence. Magyar is even pitching a bold plan to merge the V4 with Austria, with reports suggesting Vienna is receptive to a Benelux-style alliance. But let's be realistic. Can this bloc actually deliver anything tangible? Critics point out that the V4 group has historically struggled to look beyond its own internal divisions. And in the past, cooperation was derailed by fears of revived Austrian hegemony. And even today, old bilateral disputes between neighbors like Slovakia and Hungary still cause friction. And acting as one voice in Brussels will not be seamless. And while the countries aim to cooperate on a regional energy and transport infrastructure, geopolitical fault lines remain. Hungary, Czechia and Slovakia, unlike Poland, are opting out of EU's €90 billion loan package for Ukraine. So will potential divisions stop this bloc from making a real impact? Only time will tell. But with Magyar finally in default, it turns out the Three Musketeers were just waiting for their fourth.
Now, for more on this, I'm joined by our Hungarian correspondent, Sándor Síros. Sándor, good to see you. Tell us, what's Magyar's strategy here? What is he trying to achieve?
Well, as mentioned, it was his first visit to Poland, and he had two messages. First of all, he said that he is conducting foreign trips in a very different way. It was a big show what he did. He went on a commercial plane, then he took the train. He did a lot of selfies on the streets of Warsaw, so it's a different feeling after Orban. And the political message was that he wants to revive Polish-Hungarian ties, which were stuck during the Orban era. There was a lot of diplomatic tensions because of Orban's ties to Russia, and he wants to revive also the Visegrád 4, which is a key in Central European cooperation. In Warsaw, he also said that, maybe this group should extend beyond these four countries, Hungary, Slovakia, Czechia, and Poland, to Austria and to even further. Let's take a look of what he said.
Én személyesen is kész vagyok arra, és fontosnak tartom, hogy kibővítsük.
I am personally ready and consider it important to extend the cooperation of the Visegrád 4, whether with our Scandinavian friends or with Austria, Croatia, Slovenia, Romania, or the Western Balkan countries that have not yet joined the EU. The heart of Europe beats in Central Europe today.
Közép-Európában dobog. És nekünk kell azon dolgoznunk közösen.
It's clearly ambitious, Sándor, but realistically, can this bloc become a powerful one also here in Brussels?
We will see it in the coming years. The big problem for the Visegrád 4 right now is that, 10 years ago they had one major common topic, migration. They were fighting against the mandatory relocation quotas of the European Union. Now, this issue is completely mainstream, and what connects these four countries is, infrastructure, economy, business, and there is one thing that could potentially unite them is to fight against the Green Deal of the European Union and to preserve car industry, which is really strong in all of those countries.
Okay, Sándor, we'll keep an eye out for that, of course. Thank you. Now, moving on, later today, the Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum will receive the Presidents of the European Commission and Council, Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa, for the 8th EU-Mexico summit. They're expected to ink a revamped trade deal to replace the previous pact struck 25 years ago. It's set to slash tariffs on a range of goods, including agricultural products. Also in Mexico is Javi López, the European Parliament's Vice President, who has been part of these negotiations. I spoke to him in an interview and started by asking him what the deal offers for both sides.
First, after 10 years of negotiation and after 10 years without summits at the high level, that we will have it tomorrow, we are able to modernize the global agreement with Mexico after 25 years working with the current agreement. With this, we are doing more on trade, especially in predictable trade with higher standards, but also we are reinforcing our geopolitical alliance with one G20, a giant culturally, demographically, economically, and in a world where all of the rest big actors are using trade as a coercive force, we are working for predictable trade agreements.
So is it fair to say this agreement is more than anything a reaction against the unpredictability, perhaps, of Trump's America? We know both Mexico and the EU have been targeted by aggressive trade policies from the US. And is that going to work? Because some would look at the agreement that the EU has signed with the US, the trade agreement, and would say, well, actually, Trump is calling the shots.
No, I think we are working in the right direction. We are working in the direction of diversification of our economic relations in the world, trying to reduce dependencies. Also, dependencies coming from the United States. This is the reality. The risking our dependencies in trade, also in security. And on that, we are having a mix of important association agreements. We have Mercosur, that it's a game changer with the region. We have the modernization of Mexico, and also we will have India. And it's three big examples of this offensive foreign action, foreign policy that we are having.
You mentioned Mercosur, and obviously that was a big step forward. But could you argue also that the EU has been a little bit slow to deepen ties with Latin America? And we're now seeing, of course, President Trump trying to reassert his sphere of influence over the Western Hemisphere. Has the EU been a little bit too negligent in the relationship?
It's true that it was during a lot of years not in the radar of the priorities of the EU, and we were extremely focused in our neighbors. Also, we had good reasons to do that. But at the same time now, after the Ukraine war, I will say, but after the rise of Trump II to the White House, we are forced to think more strategically and act more mature in the world. And our relations with Latin America, especially, are strategical relations. It's the biggest partner in the world where we can work together for a multilateral dialogue, working with the same agenda: climate change, gender equality, inclusive growth, also defending international law and the chapter of United Nations. And on that, we are working with these association agreements that are key to reinforce and are real game changers in the region.
Now, as the Cannes Film Festival draws to a close, the red carpet has this year become a battleground over politics, ideology and artistic freedom. Artists have been weighing in on issues from the war in Gaza to gender roles. A feud has also erupted over the influence of conservative billionaire Vincent Bolloré over Canal+, French cinema's biggest funder. For more, we can cross over to Cannes now and to Jada Yuan, a journalist and writer who is at the festival. Jada, great to see you and to have you with us on Europe Today. I guess politics always permeates into this festival, and I would say perhaps that this year has been no exception.
Absolutely. It is one of the most political I've been at. I would say last year was also incredibly political. Robert De Niro came out in his opening speech called Trump America's Philistine president. But the difference is that every single day when something screens and the Canal+ logo comes up, the audience will boo, even if it's a gala premiere.
And of course, on that, Jada, Canal+, there's been a big dispute. 600 prominent figures from the film industry writing an open letter against the conservative billionaire who's its main shareholder. And this is creating quite a stir.
Yes, and it's also because the CEO of Canal+ here at Cannes, after that letter came out, basically said that they would blackball anybody who was on that letter. So they said they will blackball all of these 600 artists, including Juliette Binoche. The controversy just continues.
OK, well, Jada, we'll keep an eye out on the action from Cannes over the weekend. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on Europe Today. And that's it from us for today and for this week. We'll be back on Tuesday next week as we're taking a break on Monday. Remember to get in touch with us with your questions and feedback. Email us at europetoday@euronews.com. And in the meantime, have a great weekend.